Welcome, Lund loyalists, YouTubers watching on John Lund Unleashed and the Bay Area Sports Collective, those watching on X and Instagram and listening on Apple and Spotify. It's John Lund Unleashed and johnlundunleashed.com. Brought to you by Riopel Cosmetic Surgery and Laser Center. Right now featuring amazing stem cell technology. For all your pain and for the guys, check out the latest in low T and testosterone therapy to make you feel like yourself again. Riopel Cosmetic Surgery and Laser Center at riopelcosmetic.com. Now, all juiced up and ready to go. Here's Johnny.
All right, better late than never. I apologize, but what I was doing, or what I was trying to do, was do a remote broadcast live from 49ers HQ because I want to see how my remote equipment works. That was part of the reason why. But I wanted to give you information. There we go. I wanted to give you information on what happened today. So you see me outside, little sunglasses. I'm not trying to be cool. The sun is glaring right in my face. So I wanted to do a remote version of the show today because I was down at HQ. I was going to do a remote version. I was going to test out my remote equipment. So it is a John Lund Unleashed. We'll do about 30 minutes here. Just want to give you a quick recap of 49ers. And then tomorrow we'll do a full recap of this whole thing. But John Lynch spoke today from HQ, as did Christian McCaffrey. He's looking well and made it a point to all of us that he is fine. Thank you very much. And because I was concerned, you trade Jordan Mason, that maybe there's an issue there, what's going on as far as that is concerned. So anyway, Christian McCaffrey making it known that he is fine. Thank you very much. As well as talking to Fred Warner, he's bummed that Dre Greenlaw is gone, but he understands the business. And as far as his deal is concerned, he says it will get done in time. So really quickly, just to get you up there, and then I'll get out to the chat line and make sure we say roll call as always. But it is John Lund Unleashed. Thanks for joining us. Bay Area Sports Collective and YouTube, John Lund Unleashed. That's where we are. So no other platforms today. I said on earlier when I was going down to 49ers HQ today that we were going to do this remotely. And so we were only going to do it on these two channels. And that doesn't matter whether it's remotely or not, but that's just what we wanted to do. So as you can see on the chalkboard there, 49ers. Let me just make sure that everything's good. You can hear me okay, right? Because like I said, this is the first time we're doing the remote equipment. And we'll be doing remote shows all the time. So I just like to have everything going and so make sure that everything is good outside of the studio here. But anyway, John Lynch speaks today. We'll get to that. Draft talk. What did he say? I told you he can't say anything because it's draft time. So he's not going to say a lot. Needs 20 first-round grades is what that says right there. Let me move myself over. Can I move myself over a little bit on the board so we can see all that stuff? No, that's about as far as I'm going to go. That's probably going to make it worse. All right. Anyway, 20 first-round grades. Brock Purdy is there. Does that mean Brock Purdy and the 49ers have got progress going? No Kittle, but Trent Williams was there. CMC, as I said, 100%. You'll see some of those videos that I shot today. He does like the underdog role. So does Fred Warner, by the way. Warner's deal, we haven't talked about that, but it's got to be redone. I'll tell you why. A new defense, that's what Fred Warner talked about, and same old Salah. And even though I say same old Salah, Fred did say that things were going to be a little bit different defensively. Now, what I'm going to do is not only am I going to play these here for you and just give you a quick recap of what happened at 49ers HQ today, but what we also do is we'll post the full videos at John Lund Unleashed right after this fine broadcast, testing out the remote equipment. So I will make sure that we post full videos, maybe 5 or 6 minutes with CMC and probably about the same with Fred Warner. And I'll tell you some of the things that John Lynch said, which, as I told you before, and I said this driving down there ever so carefully while I was recording at the same time, that he wasn't going to say a whole lot. And that's pretty much what he said, not a whole lot. So anyway, very good to see everybody. Oh, thank you, NorCal. Very good, because that's just all I want to make sure. I want to make sure it sounds good. I know I don't always look good. That's not really the point. I look terrible. Sunglasses help because then they cover a half of my face, which is very nice. But anyway, very, very nice. Very loud and clear. Very nice. Good to see it. Mary, it is good to see you. Very nice. All good. Thank you for the feedback. Because lots of times, kind of like what I did today, I go off on these tangents, start talking, and I'm saying, if Brock shows up, and everyone's like, Brock has showed up. Brock has shown up. Please check your text messages. Please check the chat line. They know what's going on. And I'm like, yeah. These people know what they're doing. So good to see NorCal Refrigeration and HVAC. Very nice to see you. Dan is here today. You Trippin' is here, keeping the faith. Bebop Jones, it is awesome. Ernesto Jones, hello. Joy is here. Joy says, just finished some delicious, oh my gosh, homemade fish tacos. Oh my God. I don't mean to go on a tangent, but fish tacos are maybe my favorite food ever. Very good. I'd like to know what kind of fish you use because I'm just curious. Very, very nice. What are we saying? Damon and Larry is a perfect trifecta of local sports knowledge and not being shills helps. Yeah, you can't be a shill, man. I don't have any reason to be a shill. I didn't have any reason to be a shill before, but especially now, none of those teams are paying my mortgage. So there's absolutely Kyle. It is great to see you, my friend. Vernon, it is great to see you. Sorry I'm late. As I said, I was working up the as you can see, the remote broadcast because I want to be able to do the show from lots of different places. There is a time and a place to just pop your phone on and say, hey, there's some breaking news here. But there's also a time and a place to have a quality sounding and as good as I can looking product rather than just that. So we'll do everything. But I just want to be on remote sometimes to make sure that, I'm going to take this equipment with me. So I want to make sure that everything works. Anyway, let me start by doing this. And I need to boost the volume on these. I promise you they'll be better when I post them later. But I want to get them out there and I want to discuss them with you. So good morning, or excuse me, good afternoon, good evening, actually. If you had fish tacos already, I'm very jealous, Joy. Bay Area Sports Collective, John Lynch Unleashed. Make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure that you have those alerts on because then you might know when the show might possibly start at least. And please just give us a like. We would love that. Now, I'll give you a quick briefing on the draft because I'll tell you some of the questions, too, that I asked Fred Warner and Christian McCaffrey. Some made it to the video and some didn't. And, again, I'll post both fully a little bit later on tonight, actually right after the show, pretty much. But I want to make sure that the volume is right and everything. But so we talked to John Lynch about a number of different things. And I told you I did some videos on at John Lynch Radio when I was driving down there. And he's not going to tell you a whole lot. So he was asked about specific position groups. He's not going to rip his position groups. One thing that seems apparent, but you never know until you see the draft, is that he's got 21st round grades. He said, as you can see down there, I'm kind of jumping around on the chalkboard there, but he said there's 21st round grades. He said last year there were 23 first round grades. Just from getting a sense and speaking with John Lynch today, he didn't feel like the draft was maybe quite as good as it normally is. And one of the reasons why, and there was a report earlier this week, Adam Schefter, I think is who it was, who said that there's a number of teams, including the 49ers, who want to trade down. But as John Lynch kind of said, there's not 4 or 5 elite quarterbacks in this draft. So if there were, then you'd see teams coming up. Like Pittsburgh at 21 wants a quarterback. Jackson Dart's probably going to drop to 21 if that's the guy they want. Shedeur Sanders, I think it sounds more and more like he's going to drop to 9 to New Orleans. So there's that. Cam Ward's going 1. Travis Hunter's going 2. Probably Abdul Carter's going to the Giants at number 3, which means Kayvon Thibodeau is going to be available. And I wonder if the Niners would be interested in that. We asked John Lynch, would you be interested in trades? And John Lynch says, of course, we're in on everything. So, he just kept things general, and I get it. That's what he does. So you're going to trade up, John? Probably not. You're going to trade down, John? Well, he kind of said it takes 2 to tango, and right now there's nobody of note that somebody wants to trade up for. There's not that, Julio Jones was an elite receiver coming out of Alabama. Cleveland traded back. It was 17 picks with Cleveland to get up and get Julio Jones. Did Atlanta. Patrick Mahomes, Buffalo, ironically enough, was at 10. The Chiefs were at 27. They traded up 17 spots they gave him and gave him a boatload. The Niners obviously went 12-3 up to get Trey Lance. You don't need me to remind you of that. There's not those kind of players, and I trade didn't turn out. But what I'm saying is where teams feel like there's elite quarterbacks at the top. I don't even think Cam Ward is, to be completely honest. I've said this before. I watch a ton of college football. Cam Ward played at Washington State for 3 years. Did not hear one thing about Cam Ward being a first-round pick, let alone the first overall pick. A lot of people are like, last year when Cam Ward left Washington State, people were like, hey, he might be a mid-round guy. He might, we'll see. All of a sudden, he goes to Miami, higher-profile program. It shows you everything you need to know about the NFL draft and what's wrong with it. And all of a sudden, he's the number 1 pick because he went to Miami. He had a nice year, don't get me wrong, but he's the same guy that went to Washington State, and I don't know if he had been a 4th-rounder at that point, but whatever. That's not the point. And then as far other things that John Lynch said, so not as good of a draft or first round, but it's depth. And that's why the Niners would like to trade down, but I don't think anybody's is going to trade with them. So they're going to be forced maybe at number 11 to pick. Did laud the fact that there's a lot of defensive linemen and a lot of depth there. Didn't say they need it, but I think we all know that. We didn't ask him about Trent Williams, but here's a surprise. Trent Williams was there. And I think what that shows you, Trent Williams being there at age 37, Brock Purdy being there, and I get the sense in talking to people down there, and I'll get into this in a minute, but I'm just kind of spitballing, not my head here, is that Brock Purdy being there, I don't know that necessarily means what I initially thought it was, which is obviously they're having positive conversations and things are getting closer. Now, Mike Silver reported that. Diana Rossini reported that. But Brock Purdy's kind of a gamer. Brock Purdy loves football. Brock Purdy doesn't want to let down his teammates. It doesn't mean he's going to take a lesser deal. What it does mean is that Brock Purdy wants to be around football and doesn't want to be sitting around and doesn't want to be at home. And so, he feels like he's letting his team down. He didn't speak today, which I understand. The only two players they brought out were Fred Warner and Christian McCaffrey. And I'm sure McCaffrey didn't want to do it, but sure as hell, they didn't want to put Purdy in front of us to go contract. How many different ways can the local media ask Brock Purdy about his contract, and he can try to deny it 17 different ways? And that's kind of the only thing that would have happened. But Brock being there, well, my initial impression was it means something, and Brock Purdy being there means that they're close on a contract. I think it means that Brock Purdy loves football, loves his teammates, and doesn't want to let them down. And that doesn't mean that in the phase, I think it's around May 21st, if I'm not wrong, when they finally get on the field. This is just about conditioning, checking on everybody, anybody who had injuries, how you doing, taking a physical. Like these next few days are really nothing. The draft is Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But as far as players being there, it's just a matter of checking in with everybody. That's why George Kittle's not there. There's nothing to read into George Kittle, by the way. If you're reading into that or if somebody's writing that, or I haven't even looked today because I just literally got back from Santa Clara. There's nothing to read into George Kittle. Ever since he bought the barn or built the barn, I should say, in Nashville where he lives in the offseason, he's worked out there. So his number jumps from 12 to 22. They're gonna redeal his deal, and it's the last year of his deal. I'm going to play for you what Fred Warner says about his contract, but just to give you a background on that. So Fred's cap number last year was $12.6 million. This is how these contracts work. It's all a bunch of funny money, and it gets bloated, and then it's what's real and what's fake. Well, Fred Warner's deal went from $12.6 million this last year. The cap number jumps up to $29 million. He's not playing for $29 million, or the Niners aren't paying him under that cap number to play at $29 million. So they're going to redo that deal. It's 1 year at 29 and 1 year at 26.7. So he's got 2 more years left on the deal. That's getting restructured, and Fred addresses that. So those are the things that you need to know about today. And again, I want to go back to the draft because you're saying, well, what did John Lynch say? Here's John Lynch today from the podium, and this is the most significant thing he said from the podium, and it has nothing to do with the draft. It has nothing to do
ongoing.
Just that's Brock. He's a pro.
Let me finish my sentence, John. It has everything to do with Brock Purdy. Here's John Lynch on Brock Purdy. Sorry to interrupt.
Brock's got he's a very clear-minded and let other people influence what he should be doing. And that's one thing everybody, I think, respects about Brock. He's done a lot for this organization. And we're grateful for him and looking forward to having him as a quarterback for a long time.
Would you say that you guys have made progress on the contract talks since the last time we talked to you at the owners meeting?
I think there's been some sudden talks that have this thing going in a good direction, and I'll leave it at that.
All right, so he said that there have been some good talks, and they're going in the right direction. I'll leave it to that. Nobody followed up on that because we're not a-holes. There would have been 18 more questions in a different market, but this is a different kind of a market. So that's what John Lynch said. So do I think that it's going in a positive direction? Yes, I do, because John Lynch said it. Do I think it's going in a positive direction because Brock Purdy showed up? I don't know that I can read that much into it. I normally would say, yeah, that's the case. But in talking to Christian McCaffrey about it and talking to Fred Warner about it and talking to a couple of people that are really close to the organization that were down there today, I don't know that necessarily that's the case. They just said, I said, well, why do you think, I asked somebody, well, why do you think Brock showed up? That's got to mean that there's positive talks. One person I said, yeah, I guess you could read into that. But another person who was standing there said, well, also Brock is just a gamer. He loves his teammates. He loves football. His clock is kind of going off right now. It's kind of like, when the holidays come around, like you feel something. He's like, look, it's football. He knows he should be here. He knows it's the right thing to do. He doesn't want to let down his teammates. He doesn't want to have the taste in his mouth from last year. A lot of guys talked about that today. He wants to turn the page to 2025. he thinks the deal will get done. I think everybody down there that I talked to thought the deal would get done, but it's a matter of Brock wants to be here. So is it a good sign? I'm not saying it's a bad sign because it's not. But also what I'm saying is that I think that Brock Purdy showing up is about Brock Purdy. So that's one of the thoughts. I'll get again, I don't think that sound was outstanding as far as the quality of it. So I'll make sure that we have some higher sound as we get going on here. Let me give you a couple of things from Christian McCaffrey today. First and foremost with McCaffrey, and I think this is a big deal for him. This is the attitude that everybody had. I'm going to play one from McCaffrey and this one from Warner, and then I'll keep it to one guy. But here's Christian McCaffrey. In fact, you know what? I'm going to wait on that one. I'm going to wait on that one only because I want to stay consistent with our themes. Let me do this since we were just talking about Brock. Here's Christian McCaffrey. He was asked if Brock Purdy showing up, what does that mean for the organization? Here's Christian McCaffrey today.
Business is business, and that stuff we don't even talk about. We just continue going on as if, he'll be our quarterback. And so for us, it's just about training, getting better as a team, gelling as a unit, and just continuing to grow.
What does that say about him as a leader, him coming in?
Says a lot about him. Yeah, no, it's definitely good to see him here and working as hard as he is.
What was your take?
All right, so there's McCaffrey on it saying that it just means he's a leader and all this kind of. And see, that's what I'm saying about Brock. I guess if the negotiations were going in a negative sense, maybe he wouldn't have showed up. But you can just get it from the sense in Christian McCaffrey's voice. Brock feels like it's a letdown if he doesn't show up for his team. So I think that's a major issue to think about. Brock Purdy, yeah, could negotiations be going well? Yeah, you could, I guess, say that. But I also think that it's all about Brock Purdy not wanting to let his teammates down as much or more than our negotiations going well. I hope that makes sense. Here's more Christian McCaffrey, and this is what you want to hear from him because I've said this since they traded Jordan Mason. I didn't think it was a good idea. Jordan Mason was leading the league in rushing through, 6-7 games. He's a good back. He's a good zone read back. He doesn't have maybe the breakaway speed. He certainly doesn't catch the football like Christian McCaffrey. I understand all those things. But for a number 2 back, he's pretty good. They trade him to the Minnesota Vikings. Don't get much in return. And I think his contract was like 2 years and $7 million. So it's not, again, I know the 49ers were being very frugal this offseason to be nice. But it's still, I don't know why you trade Jordan Mason. Grendo isn't ready. Christian McCaffrey has asked a few questions. Matt Barrows must be writing a piece on it because Matt Barrows asked him 2 or 3 questions on Grendo. So expect a Barrows piece or blurb or something on Grendo here in the next couple of days. But I don't think he's ready. I think he's a guy that if you looked at his college resume, played that final year at Louisville. But before that, he was at Wisconsin. And he didn't run the ball a lot, and he was a receiver. So I still think, especially in the zone scheme where it's a little bit tricky and there's some intricacies to it that I don't think Garendo quite knows yet. I think they need a backup running back or number 2 running back. So all of a sudden they got to be in the draft for all their other needs, which are a lot. They also got it back at some point. Now maybe they can do that in free agency because the Niners are really good at that. But anyway, throw all that aside. Christian McCaffrey being healthy would be massive. Christian McCaffrey, was the first thing he was asked today was, how's your health?
Yeah, I mean, it's been such a smooth process, a lot of hard work. As soon as that injury happened in Buffalo, I was that was my goal, was to not miss a day of OTAs, be back ready to go with nothing hindering me, and that's where I'm at.
About when did your knee feel normal?
It went by pretty quickly. I don't remember the exact date, but I got to a point pretty early in the offseason where I was training full speed, ready to go.
All right, he was asked later as well if there was any restrictions whatsoever. Are you 100%? Are there any things that you can't do? Are they bringing you along slowly? And Christian McCaffrey, he doesn't like to be brought along slowly. He does not like to be taken out of a game, but he said absolutely, positively nothing. He said, I'm 100%. Said that at the end. I think it was a last question, and I think it was by Matt Barrows. So you're telling us there's no restrictions. And Christian McCaffrey said absolutely no restrictions whatsoever. So great news coming out today from Christian McCaffrey saying that he is 100% healthy. That's still, if I'm the 49ers, and I know you're a lot better having Christian McCaffrey on the field, I understand what he means to the offense, but as he starts creeping to that magical age of 30, look, he's in phenomenal shape. I mean, you're just like, dude, guy's in great shape, but you still want to have a competent backup running back. Kyle Shanahan asks a lot of his backs, especially out of McCaffrey. I think if you want to elongate his career, almost like what the Warriors do with Steph Curry, I think that you've got to do those kind of things. So that's what I think about Christian McCaffrey. and what he's going to do, and maybe the way that they're going to use him. Did I play the underdog thing? Did I play the CMC Brock I played, how he's feeling. Oh, this is the attitude. And this is what I'm going to play, because I'm going to play Fred Warner playing or saying something similar. Here is Christian McCaffrey. Both guys were asked, and the only players that were available today were given to us were Fred Warner from the defensive side, obviously, and Christian McCaffrey, as we're playing now, from the offensive side, and then John Lynch, of course. Here is McCaffrey coming into the season. I'm not going to say not a lot is expected from the 49ers, because that's inaccurate. But it's kind of a different thing where, you're the odds-on Super Bowl champions. You're going to win the NFC West. Foregone conclusion, you're going to be great. What does it feel like kind of having people doubt you? Here's what McCaffrey said.
Yeah, I like that mentality that we have, and I kind of like the narrative going around, because, those the kind of stuff where you can prove them right or prove them wrong. And I think we got a committed team, and a team that's ready to gel together and realize that it's going to take all of us, and that's how it should be showing up, and so I'm excited about that.
Is there more mentally and emotionally refreshed this offseason as opposed to since last year went so late and the Super Bowl loss, and now it's a different approach?
Yeah. Yes.
Couple more?
Do you feel that way personally? Like, you come off an injury and people say, as you get older as a running back, does that get into your mind that you're like, okay, I'll prove him again?
Really for me, it's about just proving myself right. I've been here before. I've been counted out a lot of times in my life. And so it's, when I start to focus on just outside voices, I lose control of my own life. And so I know what to do. I know what it takes. I know how I'm supposed to feel in order to be, the best me I can be. And just happy I feel like that right now.
He actually took me aside later and said it was the best question he'd ever been asked. My question right there. No, he did not say that. But so there is there's Christian McCaffrey, healthy, no restrictions. I think Pine Needle said that. Yeah, he said no restrictions. He's 100%. He feels absolutely great. So that is great news if you're a 49ers fan. Because before I go over to the defense and Fred Warner, let me just explain something for those. And I'm in the opposite field of it. And I can say whatever I want. I'm not affiliated with the 49ers. I don't work for KMBR. I don't do pre and post game. I never got a check from the 49ers. And I know a lot of people within the organization. I like them, and that's why I want them to win. But if I didn't think that the 49ers were being somewhat undervalued, then I would say it. But you start looking at who's around. Okay, here's who's not around. I get it. And we'll play Fred Warner in a second. He's going to miss Dre Greenlaw. He said as much. And you can just tell it in his face. I mean, he's a straight shooter. They're going to miss Dre Greenlaw. I don't think they're going to miss Malik Collins. I don't think they're going to miss Leonard Floyd. I don't think they're going to miss Afunga, because they've already got a replacement. I don't know. They're going to miss 2023 Shavarius Ward. They're not going to miss 2024 Shavarius Ward. And again, all due respect to him, because he was dealing with things off the field. But on the field as a football player only, which is, if I stick to that opinion, I can say whatever I want between the lines. He wasn't a very good football player last year. Just wasn't. And Renardo Green actually was graded better. And Renardo Green, to me, I don't think you need to go corner early in this draft. I think you need another one. I think you need a third one. I'm not a Trey Brown guy. Lots of injuries from the guy that came over from Seattle. But everybody is focusing this offseason on who they lost and not who returns. So Brock Purdy's deal is getting done. Trent Williams is going to be back. Christian McCaffrey says he's a go. Fred Warner's standing ahead of us. He's pretty damn good and going to the Hall of Fame. Now, look, offensively, let me just stick for the offense for a second before I get to Warner. Between McCaffrey, Kittle, Jennings, hopefully what Pearsall can be, Brock Purdy is going to come back and I think be a much better player. They will address the offensive line. There's no question in my mind. When, where, how, I don't know. I do believe, by the way, let me go back to something John said in the draft but didn't say. I think they're going to explore trades during the draft to bring in veterans, because they know damn well that they're not going to be able to get 6 or 8 starters. I said that this morning. And again, in talking to people down there today, that was reiterated to me. You're not getting 8 starters out of a draft. I think that, again, at 3, if Abdul Carter goes as expected to the Giants at 3 on Thursday, something to watch for you before the Niners pick, Kayvon Thibodeau is going to be on the block. And he would need to get paid in a year. I understand that. But you wouldn't have to worry about that right now. He comes over to the Niners, plays opposite Nick Bosa. You're pretty good. So they got a lot of work to do, especially on the defensive end. But Fred Warner said, and I'll post the whole interview. I don't have him talking about Robert Saleh in these cuts for you. But he talks a lot about Robert Saleh, and he has a hell of a lot of confidence. And one question I did ask Fred Warner that you'll hear on the video when I post it a little bit later right here on John Lund Unleashed is that they're not going to be the same defense that you saw under Saleh. They're not going to drastically change. But he said that, if Robert Saleh's evolved, Robert Saleh is different. It's still, the mantra is still the same, all gas, no brake. He did reiterate that, and we all kind of laughed. All gas, no brake. Is that still the thing? Yep, all gas, no brake. But the other thing that Fred Warner said is he has evolved. John Lynch said that he had evolved. John Lynch said during the press conference that, it's not the same Robert Saleh. And he said that's good when you get a coach back and he's experienced what he has, especially coaching in New York, that he's a little bit different. He said that's good. But in terms of like what he expects out of the defense, all pedal to the metal kind of stuff, all gas, no brake, none of that things have changed. But Fred Warner did say that things will be a little different. Things have evolved. I asked him specifically, I said, well, what do you think is going to evolve? How do you think things will be different? He's like, He's like, hey, Lund, you dumbass. It's the first day we've been here. So I don't know. No, he didn't say that. But he, in a very nice way, he said that. But he said, we'll see. But he's talked with Robert Saleh in the offseason. He knows his philosophies, but they're not exactly what they were before. So is he going to do some different things, take some more chances, do some more things? Does he have some different things that maybe he will emphasize with this team? I don't know. But Fred Warner also did say that, it is going to kind of be fun. Yeah, I wish I had Dre Greenlaw, but it's going to got to be fun with these new guys. So let me give you a little bit of Fred Warner today from the press conference. Here's Fred.
Off-season's been great. A little too long for my liking, but it's been good. Just trying to get better every day. Spending a lot of time with my family. A lot's happened, obviously, with the team, but just looking forward to having everybody back and building this thing up from ground zero. We got a long road ahead of us.
How challenging is it? I know you weren't really excited to see one of your closer teammates go. How challenging was it seeing, the off-season free agency?
Yeah, no, I think every year it's really tough because, even though you get into a season and the team might seem like, this is the same team as always. Every year you have guys who leave and it is a new team every year, but obviously this year we did lose some guys, especially, Dre, like you mentioned. That was a tough one for me, but I'm so excited for him and his new journey over in Denver and everything that he's going to do there. I think he's just getting started, right? And so, that leaves spots available for other guys to come in and compete for those jobs, right? And that's just the NFL. That's how it goes. So I'm excited all the way around.
Did Saleh have a address for?
All right, so he did talk about Robert Saleh again. I will play that. I'll post all of that, the full interview with Fred, which, like I said, about 6 minutes, full interview with Christian McCaffrey, around 6 minutes the same. And what I'll do with John Lynch, and I told you this, and I'll do this tonight. I had two things that I'm going to do tonight. One, I'm going to give you – I'm not going to so much do a mock draft as I'm going to give you a few players that I've heard their names at every draft position as far as the 49ers are concerned. I think they are going to move up, move down. They'd love to move down from 11. That's the sense I get, but I just don't think there's going to be another team because, like I said, it's not an elite draft. It's not a draft where you've got to get a guy. Now, there's a couple of different guys that could change the equation. If somebody is in love with Tyler Warren, the Penn State tight end, they're sitting at 11. Maybe there's Indianapolis at 14, doesn't think he's going to get there. That's kind of a unique player. There's a couple of guys, too, that could be slipping or falling. Jalen Walker's name's come up. I think he's going to be gone. I did hear a strange thing today. Not strange. A lot of people have Jalen Walker, the defensive end / outside linebacker for Georgia, slotted for Carolina at 8. The wild card in this team, or the wild card early in the draft, is Jacksonville, and a lot of people think Jacksonville may go after Jalen Walker, which would be kind of interesting. And then what would that do? Mason Graham, where does he go? Genty, we're hearing mixed things out of Vegas about Ashton Genty going 6 to the Raiders. So there's kind of a couple of different things there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a few different guys at the current draft position for the Niners. They're not going to draft at all those positions. I do think that if at 11, keep an eye on Tyler Warren, because if there's a team that will, Indianapolis is the team that is most talked about for Tyler Warren at 14, maybe the Jets at 7. I think they'll go offensive line, offensive tackle, Membu. But if he starts to slide, and let's see what Tyler Warren's there at 11, and the Colts are sitting there at 14, they want one. They want a tight end. Jim Harbaugh would love Tyler Warren. The Chargers are sitting there at 22. So if there's a few teams that are looking at tight end, they know they have to get ahead of the Colts at 14. Maybe the Niners would be in play. That's only if Warren falls. Warren could go 7 to the Jets, 10 to the Bears. There's a lot of discussion about that. But if he's there at 11, I think that's a luxury the 49ers cannot afford, so I don't think the Niners would take him. But I think that a team that wanted to get ahead of Indianapolis at 14, who a lot of people think would take Tyler Warren if he was sitting there, or Loveland, Colston Loveland, the tight end from Michigan. But two very different players. Loveland's more of a route runner, Travis Kelce type. I think Warren's more of Kittle, which he's a blocker and a receiver. And if you want that complete tight end, that's probably the guy that you want to go get. So that could be the difference there if he's sitting there. It would have to be a special, unique player to be sitting there at 11, and you think to yourself, well, why then wouldn't the 49ers take him? And they might. If it's an offensive lineman, I think they would. If it's a defensive lineman, although there's a lot of depth, and John alluded to that. John Lynch alluded to that in the press conference today. A lot of depth on the defensive line. So I don't know, unless it was a special guy. And that's why I continue to mention, and I did this morning, some people buzzing around that Mason Graham may drop, especially if Jalen Walker's at 5 for Jacksonville. They do something weird, and maybe then the Raiders go 6. Maybe they possibly go Genty. Although, one thing to keep in mind in the Raiders at 6, Colton Miller is squawking about his contract. He's their left tackle. There's a little bit of talk that maybe the Raiders, rather than pay him, could trade him. And now they're looking for a left tackle. And let's say that, Will Campbell is there or Membu is there at 6. Maybe they'd go that direction, trade Colton Miller, get a pick, I don't know, 3rd rounder for Colton Miller, I don't know, and not take Genty. I have a hard time believing Pete Carroll if Genty's on the board and one of the elite tackles isn't. I think Genty's going to the Raiders, but I could be 100% wrong. And then, like I said, where does Mason Miller go at that point? Or excuse me, not Mason Miller. Where does Mason Graham go at that point? Then we'll see. So that could be something that slides. But keep an eye on Tyler Warren as far as the 49ers dropping back. Here is Fred Warner, and I think this is Fred talking about his contract, actually. And let me just go over that again. Fred Warner made $12.6 million, was on the cap for $12.6 million last year. That number, I was looking over there in the offseason, like when the season finished, and I looked at Warner's number at $29 million. I went, oh, that's getting redone. Has to. And then after that, the 2026 is $26.7 million. That's getting redone. That's all the dummy money that you put at the end of contracts so that when the agent wins, because you say it's a 5-year, $200 million, and then the last 2 or 3 years are dummy years. Those are dummy years for Fred Warner. So he was asked about getting paid, getting his deal done amidst the whole conversation of Brock Purdy and George Kittle. Here's what Fred said.
I mean, it seems like they're releasing plenty of funds as it is already. Like I'm not. I get paid plenty already. But listen, that whole part of it, I know they, on my agent and the team and all that, that'll all handle itself out. I'm just obviously ready to just go to work and be the best version of myself.
To be here through.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Go ahead, Brent.
All right, so there's Fred Warner. So here's what I'll do. I just want to give you a little bit of teaser of everything, but I will post John Lynch cuts, and I'll do it at johnlundunleashed.com, and I'll write something with each cut. There was nothing earth-shattering from John Lynch today. I'm not saying to don't go to johnlundunleashed.com. There's some good information there. I just, you got to be generic. It's lying season 24/7, 365, but especially during the NFL draft. So it's not like he let the cat out of the bag on anything. He said it's going to be tough to trade down. He said there's 20 first-round grades on guys. He said, here's something interesting, and Larry Krueger and I were kind of debating this back and forth from, did he mean this or mean that by this comment? So he talked about players. He was asked specifically about edge rushers. And what I think was going on was Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M, which everybody's debating. He's got he's 6'5", 270, 4'5", 940. The guy looks great and all that kind of stuff. But it was kind of fishing for efficiency, physical, the physical traits. How do you gauge these guys? And John Lynch said all those things are nice and this and this and this. And he goes, we take everything into the equation. But he said at some point you have to produce. And that's what I mean about Shamar Stewart. Guys are really, really good in terms of, he had 33 pressures last year and all this, but he had like 3 sacks. And at some point you have to produce those sacks. I mean, guys get overrated on sacks. Like Leonard Floyd, I've told you this, he had 8.5 sacks last year. I don't expect you to go watch his other 600 plays, and I didn't either. But I watched enough of them and know enough people and talked to enough people to say his other 600 snaps beyond the 8.5 sacks were trash. And the reason why Leonard Floyd is not a 49er right now is, hey, 8.5 sacks, nothing to sneeze at. It'd be nice. It'd be nice to have that kind of production, or maybe a sack and a half more, so you can say he had a double-digit sack guy across from Nick Bosa. That'd be nice. But he wasn't good on the other 600 snaps. He can't set an edge at about 240 pounds. And so the 49ers need a guy, and he talked about this. He needs an edge setter. They need a pass rusher. They need the whole ball of wax. And Stewart can be that, the kid from Texas A&M. But one of the key things he said at the end was, at some point there has to be production along with it. And so I took that as they're not taking that dude from A&M who tantalizes everybody but hasn't quite figured it out, getting that extra step with the quarterback. Krug took the whole thing as, I think they're considering him. So, again, it's two different ears hearing two things and interpreting through our brains exactly what was said. I think it meant that he wasn't going to take him. But, again, it being lying season, and it is, maybe he's trying to throw some people off the scent. That's what I mean is going down there today, I have this skeptical ear and eye of like, well, he's going to probably say the opposite of what he really thinks. So maybe other teams are going, well, does that mean he's not going to take him? Well, it means he's not going to tell you anything is what it means. So here's what we'll do. I'll cut all this up on John Lynch, make it look nice, and I'll put it up at johnlundunleashed.com, and I'll put some comments under it. And then what I've also got going at johnlundunleashed.com right now is I'm writing a few different players at each draft spot, so 11, 43, et cetera. I do expect them to move around the draft board. I think they'll have more than 11 picks, although, again, I'll caution you with this. I think they're going to trade for some veteran players. And I showed you the list this morning. 3 of the 4 guys that I mentioned were edge guys. Thibodeau was one guy I mentioned. Jalen Hyatt, a receiver with the Giants who hasn't quite produced. I can see them giving up a late round pick for him. Real good size at about 6'1", 195. Was really good coming out of Tennessee. Has that speed element that the 49ers lack. And he was a 3rd round pick by the Giants and just doesn't have done anything. I think that he may move. So there's some guys, a few edge rushers, I think, who haven't produced to this point. Tyree Wilson, I mentioned to the Raiders. I don't know what the Raiders think of him, but lots of times when a new regime comes in and a young player hasn't produced, they're going, why do we keep him? You know, they have a new general manager there. Obviously, Pete Carroll is their new head coach. If they didn't make a mistake on the player, a lot of times if they look at them just as, you know, they looked at the film last year and went, well, the kid can't play. Well, if it's the previous regime, they're going, let's give him a chance because we took him at 7. We got to make sure that we give him a chance. The new regime comes in and says, he can't play. Let's get rid of him because we're not going to pay him. So what's the point? So he has 8 sacks in 2 years. He has a ridiculous wingspan, has all sorts of potential, a bad word. But he has all those things, and rather than pay him, the Raiders may get rid of him, discounted rate. I don't know, maybe you can get him for a 5th round, 6th round pick and make it a conditional pick. I would not say no to that because the 49ers do believe with some of these guys who have underachieved that with Chris Kuceric, their defensive line coach, that they can get the best out of some of these guys. So Thibodeau had double-digit sacks 2 years ago, 11.5 sacks for the Giants. I think that he could be a guy that they could consistently get to play well. He's big enough to set the edge as well, as is Tyree Wilson. Tyree Wilson is like 6'6", 275. Now, he hasn't done it with the Raiders. So if you're a Raider fan, you're looking at me going, dude, he sucks. I get it. Sometimes a change of scenery. They've had some luck with certain guys. You know, Arden Key came here and did some good things. And Menahu was just okay with the Texans. He comes here, does some really good things. They've had guys under this current regime, under this defense, under guys like Saleh and Chris Kuceric have their best days, best years, and then they go to other teams and they're not quite as good. So that's happened on numerous occasions. I've got to believe that the Niners feel like they can take some of these younger guys who have not played well in other places and maximize their talents. And there's a few guys out there that teams are saying, you know what, we've tried. You know, we'll move them on to another team and at least get some sort of a pick. And then in Thibodeau's case, you'd have to pay him. In Tyree Wilson's case, I think he was drafted in 23, so you got a couple of more years with him. Maybe it doesn't work out, those guys, but it's not going to just be, 8 or 10 or 11 rookies because that's not realistic to all make your team, all contribute. It's just not going to happen. So that's what I'll do. I'll post John. I'll post them in cuts. I'll write underneath them each thing that I think is relevant, put about 5 of those up. I'll write the mock draft, a few at each position. And then on the YouTube channel, John Lund Unleashed, I will put up the full Christian McCaffrey, which is about 6-7 minutes. Some really good intrigue there. And then I'll also put up Fred Warner, who, to just kind of surmise what Fred Warner said, he's bummed out that Dre Greenlaw's gone, but he's very excited that Robert Saleh's back. He's very excited for the opportunity to prove doubters wrong. Both he and McCaffrey said that. I asked McCaffrey, are you personally, because look, as McCaffrey gets older, there's been questions. I mean, we've talked about it a lot. Is Christian McCaffrey going to come back the way he was? Nobody knows. I mean, he's 100%, but he's starting to hit, that age where like, he's getting close to 30. What are we going to do? And he doesn't want to come off the field. And he blocks, he runs, he catches. He's a dude that does everything. He never comes off the field hardly. Is that going to catch up to him at some point? To the 49ers got to look at him somewhat like the Warriors look at Steph Curry and say, we got to kind of pull him back from himself. If Curry, he said it. His trainers told us this many, many times. He'd play 40 if he could. Now in the playoffs, he may have to. But I'm just saying during the regular season, Steph doesn't like coming off the court. Sometimes you got to save really good players from themselves. So maybe with McCaffrey, they got to do that. So let's see. Have we gone over everything on the chalkboard? 49ers pre-draft. John Lynch speaks. Draft talk needs lots of them. 20 first-round grades is what John Lynch said that 49ers have on players this year. Brock progress, possibly, but also Brock is just Brock. He's a football junkie and doesn't want to be away from his team. No Kittle, not worried. Trent Williams shows up. I was surprised by that. CMC says no limitations, 100%. They both like the underdog role, the Warner deal. He says he's not worried about it, but he's not going to play at $29 million on the cap this year. So add that to Brock and add that to Kittle. And that can that'll garner you space. Like Fred Warner, the next 2 years, he's on the books for almost like $55 million. That's not happening. So that's going to save him some money in the long run there. New defense, and that was something that Robert Saleh's and Fred Warner said this. Robert Saleh's coming in, and they're going to generally keep the defense, but he said everybody evolves. And he said from some early conversations he's had with Robert Saleh, the defense definitely will evolve. And then last thing is same old Saleh in terms of all gas, no break. He's still got that thing going for him, and he still gets everybody fired up and was leading a room today when everybody just kind of showed up. And just to kind of give you a once-over on what this is about, this first get-together, and why you don't panic on Brock Purdy, this is just all checking in. How's everybody doing? How was your offseason? How are your injuries? How was your conditioning? These guys are all professionals with the 49ers. I don't have to really worry about much or many guys on that front. It's just a quick check-in. Hey, how's everybody doing? How's your injuries? How's your mom? How's your dad? How you doing? These are the new coaches. How are you? Get the new guys in there, a couple of guys that you signed. Okay, we're all good. So, like I said, it's nothing to be worried about. The Brock's deal is not done yet. Late May would be the time that you'd want to get him in because that's your third OTAs or whatever, and you're actually getting on the field and doing work at that point. So, yeah, you'd like to have Brock be the leader of your team and of your offense at that point. So, there you go. Not a lot. I don't think we broke any news today in regards to the draft. We all know that it's not as good of a draft. We all know that it's not high in the quarterback rank. We all know that it's going to be hard to trade back. Like I said, watch Tyler Warren, guys like that. I think if somebody drops from a defensive standpoint, whether that be Mason Graham that we've talked about or a Jalen Walker, who I really like, somebody in that range, I think the 49ers would pounce. Other than that, I think there's going to be a number of different guys, and John was asked this very question, have you got it narrowed down? And John said, yeah, we like 3 or 4 different guys. Well, if all those guys are on the board and they have them graded kind of similarly, that's when they would love to trade down. But somebody has to obviously want to trade up. So there's that. All right, anything else I am missing? I'm getting the sun in my eyes now at this particular point. So I'm trying to see if there's anybody saying anything that we need to discuss, questions, comments, thoughts. Here's the thing. If I can't see them, and I might be able to, let me see if I can do this. Jeez, son. Yeah, that's not going to help me at all. Let me see if I can. Okay, that's better. There we go. I can see now. I can see clear. Yeah, I'm good. Let's see what else do we have today. As far as the chat, let me move over to the chat and move things up and down here. I still need to know what kind of fish. I'm sure Joy put what kind of fish she's doing to tacos, but I did not see that. Let's see what else do we got. There we go. I got to get in the chat here. There we go. I can move it up and down now, even though I have yours up. There, let me get that going. But I just got to move the chat up and down. Anything else for anybody today? And then here, like I said, lots of stuff. So keep those alerts on. I will get a bunch of stuff to you. And then tomorrow, oh, there's my good friends at East Coast. Very nice, man. She's so nice. She hung out with Krug and I almost all night. And I could tell she was like, it's getting late. It's getting late. It's getting late. Let me out of here. Let's see. They will. Bill M., they will trade for some vets in this thing. I would stake my not so great betting reputation on it, but I think that they will. What else do we have? What else? I'm really hoping that Saleh does the trick for the defense this season. It won't hurt. I'll tell you that. They've got to get some players, and I've never met a coach who had really terrible players, no matter how good of a coach, be successful. But I do think that it will help having them around, but they've got a lot of work to do on the defensive end. Like in talking to McCaffrey today, and Kittle will be in there, and they're going to fix the offensive line. They're going to score. They're going to score points. Like I said, everyone's focused on who they don't have. They do have some pretty good offensive players. Defensively, they need a lot of work. They need a lot of work, and they're going to hit it. I mean, John Lynch, if we learned anything, he knows. He knows what the defense is. He knows the problems along the defensive front. Believe me. Let's see what else. What does everybody think of the outside? Yeah, like I said, the sun's kind of moving away, so I had to do this in my backyard today. But like I said, I wanted to do it from HQ, 49ers HQ, and we weren't able to do it from down there. So I said that I wanted to test what part of the reason, not part of the reason I wanted to go down there today. I wanted to go down there to talk to John Lynch and whoever else they'd give us. Like I said, CMC and Fred Warner, but I wanted to use the equipment. I wanted to use the remote equipment. I'm like, I'm still using the remote equipment because I want to make sure everything works. So it does. So we're in really good shape now. All right. Anything else tonight? All right. We got Giants baseball coming up pretty soon too. So I don't want to delve into that because I got to watch Hicks because today I was saying, if Hicks doesn't pitch well, guess who? Yeah, Mr. Birdsong's been in the rotation. You know that I love Mr. Birdsong. So we'll see about that. All right. Any questions, any comments, any thoughts? You got any thoughts or questions or comments on the draft? Hit me up in the comment section right here on John Lund Unleashed or at the Bay Area Sports Collective at John Lund Radio on X/Twitter. We'll be back tomorrow at 8 a.m. for the show. 8 a.m. Hopefully sharp, maybe 8:05 tomorrow for the Wednesday edition of the show. Keep those alerts on at John Lund Unleashed because I will post full interviews with CMC and Fred Warner so you can hear and see everything that they were saying, and then I'll cut up that John Lynch for you into bite-sized pieces, make some comments, and put that up at johnlundunleashed.com, and then I'll finish up on my draft stuff. So we got a lot to do. Thanks for hanging out. Sorry I was late here, just trying to get the remote set up, but now that we're set up, it's going to be nice and easy from this point forward. Everybody have a great night. Questions, comments, thoughts, hit me up. Make sure you hit that like button before you get out of here as well on John Lund Unleashed. Subscribe, tell your friends and enemies, and get those alerts on so you know that when I'm jumping on or when I've posted those interviews later tonight. Everybody have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. Talk to you tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific on John Lund Unleashed.
Thanks for hanging out with John Lund Unleashed. We'll try to be better next time, though I wouldn't hold my breath. Please like and subscribe on the John Lund Unleashed Pod YouTube channel. Watch live shows weekdays at 8 a.m. on YouTube, Instagram, and X. And make sure to have your alerts on for shows throughout the day or night. All things Lund can be found at johnlundunleashed.com. johnlundunleashed.com.
Goodbye!